So this, I'm going to hand over now to Linette Manuel, who is going to talk to us about 3D printed fashion. Hi, Linette.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the introduction. Then let me just share my screen and let me know if you can see it.
Yes, we can see that.
Perfect. So, hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Linette Manuel, and today I'll take you for an exciting route to the world of 3D printed fashion and how you can actually get started with 3D printed fashion in your classes. And now I will be talking for about 40 minutes, but please feel free to ask any questions in the chat. So don't hesitate if there is anything I'm talking about and you feel that you don't understand or need me to explain or go a little bit deeper, then please feel free to write your questions in the chat section. At the end, we will have like 20 minutes to discuss it, and I'll be very glad to answer all of your questions. Now, before I start, let me introduce myself a little bit. I have a very untraditional, I would say, route into education or path into education. I have started within IT. I have started working in a corporate environment at a big corporate IBM. And I started working there with the close collaboration with innovative teams. And I was very lucky at the beginning of my career that I got to get inside and see all of the wonderful potential that modern technologies had, because up to that time I only thought that the computer is good for chatting with friends and watching YouTube. But then when I started studying IT at the university and went to IBM for my first job, then I really explored the world, and it was really the world of emerging technologies back then. Back then, the emerging technologies were chatbots, but not as smart as they are today. Not the visual, I would say, the virtual assistants that we have like ChatGPT, but it was really like very simple conversation assistants. But I very early saw what the power of AI is possible to do with, for example, detecting early breast cancer, or helping like navigate cars, how to self-driven cars. And it was very interesting for me. And when I was surrounded in this wonderful environment where everyone was working on innovations and really trying to use technology for good, then I ask myself a question: how is it possible that I'm learning about all of these amazing things so late? And I decided to co-found a company called Code Rebels, which is a company here in Czech Republic that is teaching kids from very early age, from 6 to 16 years old, how modern technologies work, how to understand programming, 3D printing, 3D modeling, and all of the beautiful technologies that we have now, but also how to learn about the ethics and all of the aspects that we have to be careful about and we have to think about. And when we started the company, I got assigned a very fancy role called Chief Learning Experience Officer, which was a very, very fancy way how to say that I was in charge of curriculums and teaching in classes. Then COVID hit, and when COVID hit, I actually realized that I always had passion in fashion, and I always wanted to do fashion, but I never had the courage to do it. So I decided that life is quite short, and maybe I should be trying to fulfill my dreams. So I enrolled here in Institute of Fashion in Prague and did my fashion design course. I got a very nice feedback from the teachers and a little bit of encouragement, which was exactly what I needed. And then I was thinking, okay, I have this journey or the career that I've built in IT, and then I have fashion, which is my passion and my dream. Is there a way how to merge these two worlds together? So I was researching and I found out that there is a textile academy in Amsterdam, and I decided to enroll there for their course that was specifically designed into growing your world in and combining these two wonderful worlds of fashion and technology. We were learning how to use 3D printers to create 3D printed textiles, or use how to embed electronics into the garments, but also how to create natural dyes or biomaterials. So it was really in the intersection of science, technology, engineering, and fashion. And I fell in love with the way we were learning, and the same question popped into my mind: why am I learning about all of these amazing creative fields so late? And that's why I decided to come up with Makeful. And Makeful is now a project in which we are going on the mission to make STEM learning more inclusive and help to bring technologies of the future into the classroom. And we are helping schools around the world to adopt fashion tech. Before I start, let me just zoom a little bit in and dissect fashion tech, because fashion tech is a very, very huge field. And we are now starting with the wonderful area, which is 3D printed fashion, which is one of the areas I'm most passionate about. So let me just tell you a little bit what is 3D printed fashion. When we think about 3D printed fashion, we think that it's an area that has been here for it's a quite novel area, which is not completely true, because the first 3D printed dress has been 3D printed in 1999. So it's more than a quarter of a century since we have 3D printed fashion, and we've moved quite forward with what is possible today. When we talk about 3D printed fashion, we really talk about different types of 3D printed garments. So it can be a 3D printed tank top, 3D printed underwear, 3D printed jackets, 3D printed bags, like really any part of garment or accessories that you can think about, we are now able to create. There are different types of 3D printers and different techniques that we can use to create 3D printed fashion. Today, I'll be focusing on the FDM or FFM 3D printers, which are the 3D printers that take in the filament and push it through the extruder and create the object layer by layer. But apart from that, we can also use the other most common known 3D printers, which are the SLA 3D printers or SLS 3D printers. The FDM 3D printers we use to create 3D printed textiles. The SLA 3D printers, which are very wonderful in the way how we can create very small details. So when we want to 3D print, for example, shoes, or I think that the even bigger use is to 3D print necklaces, earrings, rings, any small accessory that needs really a lot of details. And then the SLS 3D printers are the most expensive, the most rarest, but also I would say the ones that are mostly used in the industrial design of work, of fashion. And those 3D printers are the 3D printers that are used to produce full garments. I wanted to show you just some two examples of 3D printed fashion that my students have created. I wanted to talk about specifically the left one. It's a picture. My student Lucy has created this 3D printed bag, but she didn't print out the whole bag. She only 3D printed the handle from recycled materials. When she was thinking about her final project, she was thinking about how to use how to take the materials or old bags that nobody was using anymore and give them a second life, and maybe make them look a little bit more luxurious, more futuristic, and give them give the bag or the garment an opportunity to be reused, and not only seen as something that is a second-hand piece, but something that is actually something luxurious. So she took this bag and thrifted it for £2, and she created this very nice handle that at the end looked like a luxurious bag that could be standing at any fashion show. And
No, we're not actually looking at a bag at the moment. We're looking at a waistcoat and little skirt.
Oh, can you not see this picture?
Oh, right. Yes, yes, yes. Sorry. I didn't realize that was a bag.
That's the bag.
Okay, okay, okay.
And then on the right side, there is a picture of a garment that was designed by Isabel. I'll talk about it a little bit more later, but I just wanted to show you that today we are also able, which is something we weren't able to do and something that maybe would have been a question of yours. Well, if we can 3D print textiles, can we also print nice textile patterns? Can we have colorful t-shirts and shirts and skirts? Well, as you can see on the picture, Isabel was able to create this beautiful t-shirt that is fully 3D printed. How do we actually create the 3D printed textiles? Well, there are many methods how we can create 3D printed textiles. I would say the two main methods are the chainmail method and the infill method. I don't talk about the chainmail method as much, because even though the chainmail method is the easiest way how to create intricate woven fabrics, but then when you think about chainmails, it's not. I think you can all guess that it's not very comfortable. So it's more used in, as I said, like fashion shows or some high-end couture, but it's not very much pleasurable. And most of the designers that are already trying to make fully 3D printed garments are using the infill method instead. The infill method is actually very simple. It actually is just using the mathematical functions that the 3D printers and the slicers that we are using for 3D printers are offering to us, which is the filled space in between the top shell and the bottom shell, and using the infills, the structures that fill in the space, as textile structures. So when you think about a cube and you want to 3D print a cube, and then if you think about the space that we have in between, then we have to somehow fill in the space. The space has many like mathematical functions that have been pre-designed by already the providers of 3D printers or the designers of the software. And textile designers have looked at these structures and said, would that be possible to, instead of printing like big printing objects, can we just squish the square, make it very thin, and use the functions and structures that we have already pre-built in the software to create 3D printed textile. And that's how they innovated, iterated, and that's how they came up with the 3D printed textile like fabric. This is how it looks, the result when we print it out. And you can see that it's quite flexible. You cannot achieve the flexibility by using hard filaments, even though if you print out, it was actually the first mistake that I did when I was learning about 3D printed textiles, is that I was trying to print with hard filaments, and it did work partially, that because if you printed the hard filament, if you print it very, very thin, then you get a very nice thin layer that is bendable, but it's not flexible. So even though the t-shirt was very lovely, I couldn't actually get inside of the t-shirt because the t-shirt wasn't flexible enough to stretch over my body. But when you use flexible filaments, then you can get like really, really flexible material and something that really could resemble textiles. Let me talk about all of the 3D printed fashion techniques. Not all of them. I am going to talk about only 6 of them that I like the most, and that I think could be really a nice enhancement, every single one of them, for your classes. And then a little bit more from digital fabrication, because I think that it's a very nice addition in combination with 3D printed fashion techniques. So the first one I already have talked about, which is the 3D printed, creating 3D printed textiles with flexible filaments. And you can just see in the picture or at the video that it really can create very, very light and thin textiles. And it really depends on our design. So we don't have to be creating only I would say very loose textiles. We really can create from textiles that are lace-like to textiles that are almost like rigid like jeans. And it's just about how we design and which filament do we choose to create and produce the actual textile. Another very nice method, which you might be familiar, is using sublimation in subli printing. That's how we actually got the colorful patterns in order to create beautiful colorful garments. The method is called subli printing, and subli printing was developed and invented by wonderful designer Brigitte Koch. And Brigitte was thinking about the troubles and the issues that we used to have with 3D printed textiles, which is that you could only print the colors that the providers would give us, the vendors of the filament would give us, and then the list was really limited because most of the providers were only giving flexible filaments in nude, white, or black color, which is very limiting in especially in the era of fashion in the fashion industry. So she was thinking about sublimation, and then she was thinking, okay, if we can use heat from ironing to transfer the prints, could we also use the heat from the 3D printers to actually create wonderful patterns or colorful patterns on top of the 3D printed textiles? And so she have tried, and today, it's been, I think, 4 years, we are really able to create very nice colorful prints. And so we are not limited to the colors that also have become much more you can choose much more colors than it used to be, but we can also have these wonderful colorful prints and then try them, use them, and have more fun with the students in the classes who maybe are also much more interested in the very like artsy style of the textile, like how the pattern communicates and what they want to express, and not only limited to the construction of the garment and the innovative side of the 3D printing. For the students that might be, or not only for students, but for everyone who might be a little bit scared of 3D printing or want to take it step by step, then there is a nice method which is much more crafty, and that's hand 3D printing. Hand 3D printing is a method that can be used to also create 3D printed fashion, but mostly it's used to create decorations, beading, embroidery on top either of classical textile or on top of 3D printed fabric. And there are quite a bit of designers who use hand 3D printing to create, for example, 3D printed lace with 3D structures. But you can also just use the 3D pen and take your mannequins, tape down the mannequins, and move with the 3D pen on top of the mannequin, design your own 3D printed textiles designs. Of course, it's a very specific technique, and it requires a bit of patience because you have to be like artistic, crafty, and a little bit handy. But with patience, it really pays off, and it looks really beautiful at the end. And when I was teaching my students, most of them at the beginning, because they were assigned to do a final project, most of them were convinced that they will do hand 3D printing, but at the end they realized they were just scared about the 3D printers. Well, at the end of the at their finals, they actually decided to, most of them choose 3D printing with the 3D printers, but they still used hand 3D printing to design different decorations, to connect the pieces together, and just bring a little bit of the crafty side and arty side to the project. Another technique is modular fashion. Modular fashion, I would say, is now very popular in general in fashion. You can design different modules and create fashion that is not connected through sewing machine or hand stitching, but just designing these interlocks that lock together and let you create a pattern module by module. You can do this with textiles, but what was discovered is that when you do the 3D printed fashion, not only that you can mostly use only the small build plates of the 3D printers, so it makes more sense to design the garments modular. But also the structures, you can create different structures on the textile, on the 3D printed textile, and then it holds much better because the structure of the material is a little bit different than I would say traditional textile, and there is a little bit more friction on top of the material, so it's quite harder for the pieces to unlock, but also it means that it will hold a little bit longer. The whole idea of the modular fashion is also thinking about sustainability. So 3D printed fashion is supposed to help with the way how we think about garments. And when we design it in a modular way, then of course we can instead imagine if you had a t-shirt and then one module would break down. So instead of just throwing away the t-shirt, you can just print out the module and fix the module. And not only you can print out the module and fix the module, but you can deassemble your garment and create something different. So you can for example, start with a t-shirt, and then from the t-shirt you can have a crop top, and if you are done with the crop top, then you can do a bag out of it and just modulate and change the interlocks and adjust the interlocking systems to create something different. Here is just an example of a 3D modular design, which was designed by my friend Barbara, and she just wanted to do this wonderful top for me, and the top is completely modular, and then the modules are designed so when you complete the design, then it looks like flowers, which I really liked, and I worn that to one of our conferences. Apart from modular fashion, how can we assemble 3D printed fashion? Well, there are many ways how we can assemble 3D printed fashion. We can use also the traditional traditional techniques. So we can use hand stitching. We can use sewing machines to connect 3D printed textiles, but the innovators and the designers and the researchers were thinking about how we can use the properties of the material, which is that they melt with heat. It has to be quite high heat, and they can connect together. So in most cases, you will see that designers are using either 3D pens or iron solders to connect the pieces together. Or you can also use, you can just flat iron it, but then it's a little bit harder to be precise with the big iron. So it's much easier to do it with the small iron solder. And if in your school you're possible to use it, you're not using the actual iron to solder anything, you're just using the tool for the heat. But also, as I said at the beginning, you can, if you want to, there is actually no issue in using hand stitching or using a sewing machine. The only thing that I would suggest is to use a sewing machine, use the needle that you would use for a denim. just to make sure that it goes through the material very well. I mentioned that I would like to show you a little bit also from digital fabrication. So when we did the classes with the students, we didn't have the mannequins, and it was on purpose, because I wanted them to create the mannequins themselves from their body. So we used a very quick app that is called the 3D Look to capture our measurements, our body measurements. And then in two softwares, we've created a digital avatar, and then they exported it and cut it out the pieces. So we are left only with the torso, and exported it, the files to cut out on the laser machine with polyurethane. And then they just assembled the pieces together, and they had this base for their mannequins that they could use to use it in order to create their garments and present it on them. And I really like to mention this story, because at the beginning it really got me thinking about how much the students suffer from body dysmorphia. Not only the students, I actually realized that I suffer from it as well, because when we printed out the mannequins, we were just constantly measuring the mannequins, and we couldn't believe that the small bodies, which were representation of our bodies, are actually our bodies. And I was just thinking that I think that would be a very nice experience for all the students to do it. And we at the end realized that it's okay, we can eat, we are fine, and that we don't have to stress about anything. And it was a good also lesson for us to think about, like, how we see our bodies, and how the media are modifying our views on our own bodies. Let me show you the 3D printed fashion projects of my students. Let me show you the first project. This project was created by Hannah. Hannah has never used any 3D modeling tool. She has never used 3D printing. She was thinking about designing and creating a piece of garment that is going to represent the futuristic style, because she didn't want it to recreate 3D printed. She didn't want it to recreate textiles with 3D printing. She wanted to create a different material. And since she really likes designing like corsets, and she in general, she's like really into corsets, she said that she would like to create a 3D printed corset, and take the advantage of the 3D printer and make the bones and the boning of the corset easier, so she doesn't have to be doing it herself. And she has produced this wonderful piece of garment. She, as I said, in order to create these pieces, of course, she had to design the pieces. She was using Corel, I believe. She was using Corel to make the 2D designs, and then she has used Tinkercad to create the 3D designs. The Tinkercad is a free software that you can use. It's a very simple software, and the full piece was designed there. And then she just 3D printed it on the machines. It took her about 5 printing days to print it out, and then she had 2 more days to stitch it together. And she wanted to do a combined technique of hand stitching the corset, but also using the modular pieces. So the skirt at the bottom is connected with modules, but the corset itself at the top, she hand stitched it by hand. Then Isabel, she is very much focused on sportswear, and she wanted to recreate, I would say, tennis sportswear, and she really fell in love with sublime printing. So she did a lot of, those are just few swatches, but she did a lot of swatches with sublime printing, and she was testing which swatch would be the best. And then she decided to design and 3D print this 3D printed t-shirt with the 3D printed skirt. At this picture, this is the picture before the final presentation, but she was able to also 3D print a pocket on the skirt and also add buttons. So at the end, it was a fully wearable garment. Then Emma was really interested into creating like a 3D printed fashion, a 3D printed costume. So she wanted to really create something very artistic. So she was combining hard 3D printing with soft 3D printing, using the hard filaments, but also the soft filaments. And she wanted to create like this structure of shredded bones and 3D printed directly on textiles using flexible filaments. So it mimics the ribs. So I think on the left corner picture here, you can see that it has these structures that should supposed to be look like ribs. And then she 3D printed also gloves to like complete the full look of the design. But of course, in your classes, you don't have to start with these big projects. You can also create small projects. You can make a 3D printed tank top or 3D printed scrunchie, or you start just with simple design of 3D printed lace watch, or use really just a 3D pen to create beautiful 3D printed patterns on top of the textiles. The most common question I get is, what do I need to get started with the 3D printed classes, and what are the equipments, not only the hardware, but also the software. So let's get into it. When we talk about softwares, I always say that the first row is something that I would suggest is the minimum. And the bottom row is just for those who are really advanced or want to be advanced or want to really jump into, I would say, advanced techniques of 3D printed designing and using little bit more difficult techniques or softwares that are not only free or in freemium versions. So starting with the top row, you definitely would need a slicing software, any slicing software that works with your 3D printer. I will tell you which 3D printers are the best for 3D printed textiles in a second, but you will definitely need a slicer, but any slicer would work. Then Tinkercad as a free software, it's a web-based software where you can do very simple 3D designs. Canva just for the presentation or to create simple 2D designs. Milanote is a very nice software, which is just a suggestion from me because it's a software that lets you create fashion mood boards, storyboards, and present projects. The designers are from creative fields, so they really put in the work to create a very simple app that can be used in freemium version that lets you not only create but also present and create very nice presentations of your work. And then Adobe Firefly, or I would say Nav, or Adobe Express, if you want to add a little bit more of the futuristic tools and use Gen AI and explain to your students not only the ethics of it, but also the application, so they really have the experience of how it is to generate, for example, a pattern for a textile with AI, then Adobe Firefly and Adobe Express are very good softwares to use, mostly because I think that most of you will have, if you have Adobe Cloud at your school, then you will have access to the most the premium version, so you won't be limited and you will be able to do almost anything, which is very nice. But also the freemium version, the free version, is very powerful. So if you would like to get into Gen AI with the students and use it in your fashion classes in order to, for example, create the patterns, then I would definitely suggest that. And then from the bottom row, Make Human, that's the software that we use to create a virtual representation of our bodies. And Make Human is a open source software, so it's for free, that lets you create digital avatars. So it can be used for games, for any designer, a 3D designer can use it, but also it can be just used as a tool to simply create a digital human. Rhino 3D is one of the softwares that can be used to create parametric designs or more complicated and difficult designs or modular fashion and modular pieces that are a little bit more, I would say, artistic, or can be a little bit more difficult. Then Rhino 3D would be a very nice option. Some schools also have Rhino 3D licenses available. So if you would like to, for example, be able to create some textile patterns with parametric design, which is a design made using mathematical functions and scripting languages. It really is a little bit more of a work, I would say technical work, but you are able, for example, to create now I forgot the word. You are able to create a pattern of a skirt, and then with little scripts, you can just adjust the pattern based on all of your body measurements. So you don't have to like redesign the pattern every time you're creating it or designing it for a specific person, but you can actually just take the measurements of the person, send it to the Grasshopper, which is just one of the add-ons for Rhino, and then say, okay, I just need the pattern to be a little bit bigger, and now just divide it into several modules and pieces that can be printed then on a 3D printer. Then a Slicer for Fusion 360, which is the software that we used to slice our bodies or the torsos that have been designed in Make Human. And it can output not only G-code for the 3D printers, but also like STL files for laser machines. So it's a very nice software, and also it's for free, but I would say it's just an addition to the palette of the softwares that you could be using. 3D Look. 3D Look is the app that we used to measure our bodies. It's an freemium app that is quite powerful and lets you take with two pictures, you are able to get your body measurements with the accuracy of 96%. And as we have tested it, and it really worked for all of us, for all of the students. So we didn't have to like measure our bodies. We just took two pictures and it was done. And then of course, Adobe Illustrator, just to create, if you want to create more difficult patterns and structures and ornaments, then starting 2D is always the easiest with 3D printed textiles. When we look at the tools or the hardware, then of course you need to have a 3D printer. The FDM or FFF 3D printer would be the best. Then a nice addition is a sublimation printer. You don't have to, either you can source or outsource the printing of the sublimation papers, or you can, some of you might have it in school, or some of you might want to get it and use the sublimation printer not only for 3D printed textiles, but also for traditional textile classes. Then sublimation printers are a very nice addition. Then 3D pen, iron solder, some clippers, traditional textiles, and of course, basic sewing equipment and filaments, specifically the flexible ones. While I'm talking about flexible filaments, I would like to tell you which filaments are the best to start with and to use. Flexible filaments, there are different types of flexible filaments, and you can choose the flexibility of the filament or choose the filament based on the flexibility. And the flexibility is measured in a shore hardness. And I always suggest to all of the teachers to start with the less flexible filaments, because the more the filaments is the less the filament is flexible, the easier it is to print from it. So the more the filament is actually flexible, then the hardest it is to print from it. But if you want to achieve very, very like delicate and soft materials and soft textiles, then the more flexible the filament is, the easiest it is to achieve that. We have different types of materials, and I would like to show you, because when I talk about shore hardness, then it's usually very abstract, and I don't want you to have an abstract, I don't want you to have just the abstract knowledge of how the shore hardness is measured and how it looks like. So I have prepared for you just a little visual clue. Maybe I'll just stop presenting for a second. Can you all see now my camera? Cool, perfect, thank you. So this is the filament. This is a flexible filament, and the flexible filament is of shore hardness and 82A. And as you can see, I'm trying to stretch the filament. This is the filament that is most commonly used by the designers, because it's still quite flexible, but it's very easy to print from, and most of the 3D printers will accept this filament. So you can see that I'm applying a little bit of strength, but I can. It takes me a bit of strength to stretch it. Then if I go to flexible filament 70A, the lower you go with the number, the more flexible it is. So 70A is still, I have to still apply a little bit of strength, but you can see that I can stretch it a bit more. And from 70A, you can produce very nice soft fabrics. But for example, if you wanted to 3D print, or if your students wanted to 3D print garment, underwear or swimwear, then it would be a little bit harder to do. And this is the 60A, which is the most flexible filament that we have so far. And that's really flexible. I'm really not trying to stretch it. It really bounces back and forth. And you can create beautiful 3D printed underwear with it, but it requires a little bit of, I would say, knowledge and patience to print from it. So I always advise any teachers to start with the materials that are of a bigger shore hardness. Let me just quickly go back to my presentation. You can also use the different types of filaments to create, not only to use to create 3D printed textiles, but if you want to add more aspects and more I would say futuristic and creative aspect into your classes, then you can also use the properties of the special filament. So for example, you can use air purifying filament and assign to your students to create a garment that would be that will also have the aspect of air purifying. Or you can use Technicoa filament, that is a filament that has infused citronella, which is a natural mosquito repellent. Or you can use glow in dark filament and create, for example, sportswear, a safety or a safety vest, whenever it's needed to have a reflective garment. Or another very, very interesting filament, which is now my favorite, is the color changing filament that changes colors based on the temperature. The best part of 3D printing is also, of course, choosing the right 3D printers. The 3D printers in general that I would suggest to choose is the 3D printers that has specified that they have direct extrusion. You can also print or other 3D printers with flexible filaments, but then they would probably let you print only from the 82A filament max. Then if you want to have a better range or more opportunity to print from different the filaments with bigger range of flexibility, then I would definitely suggest to you to use 3D printers with flexible with direct extrusion, or 3D printers that have specifically mentioned that they can be used for flex filament. So you will see there TPU or TPE or flex mentioned in the filament section that the 3D printers accept. Let me jump the benefits I'm sure that Dawn will then share with you and you can read through it. But I also wanted to just mention some designers, award-winning designers that I have also done interviews with that have shared their the way how they create their designs and how they think about 3D printed fashion and how they incorporate 3D printing in their fashion as an inspirational talk for my students. And one of the most interesting is, I think, Laila Porkes, which is an Israeli designer, and she uses robotic arm and a 3D pen to create 3D printed fashion. So on the pictures, there are just some very, I would say, haute couture designs, but she also uses the 3D pen to really create wearable 3D printed fashion. And she is about to launch her first 3D printed fashion first 3D printed fashion collection this year. Then we have Brigitte Koch that I have already talked about. Brigitte is a huge pioneer of 3D printing, especially the modular 3D printed fashion. And you can see at the middle, that's one of her longest, biggest project that she has done. And that's a 3D printed kimono. And that the entire kimono has been fully 3D printed and is modular. So you can take out any piece that it's not working and replace it, or make the kimono shorter if you want to, or longer if you want to. Last but not least is Batul Al-Rashdan, and Batul is a Jordanese designer. She started as an architect, and then she's now very much focused on using 3D printing to create 3D printed textiles, but her main focus is creating 3D printed textiles with biomaterials. So she's tweaking her 3D printers and using the 3D printers to create textiles and combine it with the biomaterials that she produces herself. These are just some pictures of the finals with the students. Most of the students did few samples. Some of the students did a lot of samples, and their finals were just about like showing what they've done throughout the time that we had together, and to showcase all of the work. And it was a very wonderful, wonderful week. And to get a little bit practical, let me just get to the costs, because I think that's also an important talk when it comes to like getting started with the 3D printed fashion. What would that actually cost you or your school to have 3D printed fashion classes? So if we think about a class of 20 students, then we have to divide the cost, like the cost that you will have to put in at the beginning in order to get all of the materials and the hardware, and then what it will cost you yearly to get the flexible filaments and all of the sublimation papers. If you look at the cost of the 3D printers, the cost of the 3D printers now are quite affordable. You can get 5 3D printers for 600, 800 pounds. And it's really, it's really nice, and the 3D printers are really working well. For class of 20 students, I would suggest to have 4, 3, 5 3D printers. Of course, the more 3D printers you have, the better. But I would say that 3, 4, or 5 3D printers are enough. Then, of course, some 3D pens, iron solders, the sublimation printer, which is a nice addition, which is an initial cost, but it saves you a lot of money at the end, because it's much cheaper to print your prints at school than outsourcing it outside. Then the sewing kits and the flexible filaments. I have actually counted flexible filaments. I was quite generous because I was thinking about all of the Hanas that want to make like the full 3D printed garment, which is like 800 grams of filament per student. But you can, of course, always reduce and tell the students that they have to like print really flat projects like a t-shirt or tops or tank tops, and then it can be even half of the price or the third. So if you look at the price, you can start with £1,000, and then yearly it will cost you about £800. To end my presentation, I just want to tell you that, of course, the goal of 3D printed fashion and adopting 3D printed fashion in your classes is not to make everyone a fashion tech designer. The idea is that fashion tech is a very good entry point for students into the STEAM world, and it just creates a very nice opportunity for them to explore the traditional STEM in a more creative and for them maybe a little bit more um, in, engaging way, or in a way that can be a little bit more that they feel that can be really quite I would say close to their hearts, because all of the young people and all of the young students, young minds are now really thinking about how to express themselves through fashion, and we can deliver to them like the traditional experience and talk about the fashion aspects, but also teach them a little bit from the futuristic world and all of the digital tools and skills that they will need for their future. Thank you so much. And now there is space for questions. I'm sorry, I saw that the time is quite running out. I'm very chatty, so I apologize that I took the time, but I would love to answer any of your questions that you have.
Thank you so much, Linette. I think you've answered quite a few of the questions that have come up in the chat. So people were asking what was the app software for making the mannequin, and somebody said 3D look. I'm just looking at a few others. What are the filaments? What are the filaments made from? Somebody's asking about how sustainable they are.
That's a great question. There are quite few of filaments. So TPU and TPE are recyclable filaments. So if you don't connect TPU to textiles and just create 3D printed textiles itself from the specific filament, then all of the filaments can be recycled. And not only they can be shredded into pieces, and they can be used to create a new filament. The only issue with the filaments is that throughout the recycling cycles, they lose their flexibility. So usually the designers that are using the filaments are thinking about, okay, so this is the new filament that I have bought. I will create something that is wearable for the body, for example, a t-shirt. And then when I take back the t-shirts and shred them and recycle the material to produce another material, in the next cycle, the material is going to be less soft, so I can create, for example, a bag. then if I take the bag, I can create shoes, and then at the end of the cycle that I can make only accessories. So all of the filaments, TPU, RTP, are recyclable, but then they are, of course, filaments that are a little bit more expensive. Well, not a little bit, they are quite expensive, and they are made from, they are biodegradable, so they can be tossed in the, well, some need to be but need to biodegrade in the specific institutions and environments, but there is also this new filament time blast that is supposed to be not only programmable, so you can the vendors or the providers of the filament are saying that they can program how long the filament should be stay intact. So they can, like, for example, say if you want a filament that can stay in the way it is for 5 years, and then it starts slowly biodegrade in an environment naturally. But it also is very easily biodegradable in any microbiome. So if you put it in water, it biodegrades and it leaves no trace. If you shouldn't do it, but if you leave it in a forest, then it would do the same.
Okay, that sort of answered the question, I think. Somebody's asked, so if you can answer these quickly, how many grams of filament would a student need for a t-shirt?
For a t-shirt, 80 grams of filament.
Okay, that's answered that. I'm assuming that you can print onto fabric. So what are the best fabrics to print onto?
Tulle, I would say that was the best, or any stretchy fabric. 4-way stretchy fabric would be the best. 2-way works too, or any fabric that has a lot of pores.
Okay. What about, oh yeah, somebody's asking, are there any templates for modular options?
They are. I can share it with you, and then you can share it with the others.
Okay. What are the recommended care instructions for one of these garments?
That's very nice question. It actually is easier. Well, you can still wash it in a washing machine
Oh,
on low. You can wash it even on low uh, degrees of temperature, but then it's a specific material that doesn't hold as much bacteria, and the dirt holds doesn't hold as if it was textile. So you can also just wash it by hand, just take a shower with it, and it's done.
have you got any recommendations for which brand for the 3D pens?
Mm-hmm. I was using Sunlo 3D pen. That's a very good brand. But I would actually just check if the 3D pen can heat up to 230 degrees, and then it would definitely melt any TPU.
Okay, this is a technical question for the dye sublimation. Does the paper go onto the bed of the 3D printer?
Yes, the paper needs to go on the bed on the 3D printer, and I can show you. You just tape it down like this on top of the bed, and the printed side has to be facing up, and then you just print on top of the paper, and then you have the sublimation done.
Okay, so has anybody got any more questions? That is absolutely fascinating. Bravo. Oh, we got another question just come in. Oh yeah, somebody says fantastic. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank
Really,
you.
really interesting. I don't know if any of these teachers will actually have a go. Is there anybody who's still online thinks they might have a go at this or already doing it? Just put it in the chat now. Yeah, it's Meta, MM, whoever MM is.
We'd
That's
love to see them, so just send them to us.
Yeah, we would absolutely love to see if
Put
any
them on the Textile Teacher Centre, send them to me and I'll put them on Instagram
He
or
says,
tag
well, they're
me.
trying. Oh, there's a few. Lisa Marie says they're trying. There's
that's
somebody saying they're
nice.
going to have a go.
That
Yeah,
is very, very
Bernie's saying she's getting 4 3D printers very soon, so that's good. Bernie, you want to see
Yes,
those?
if you're ever in England, Lynette, they'd all love to do a day's course with you. I think a whole day's
Absolutely.
course.
If we could organise it, absolutely. Maybe Bernie would like to host that one, but she's getting four printers.
Yes.
Faye said, I think, is it Faye? Fiona said, I think a CPD day would be fun.
Yes, course, yes, please.
On tools, so yeah.
Perfect.
Somebody said course, please. Linette, you've got to, if you're coming over to England, let us know and we'll set you up.
Faye, send us what you've done, Faye. We'd love to see it.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording now.